Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 5 Million Milestone Podcast, where we bring you insights and strategies to help ambitious small businesses optimize their growth. In today's episode, we are thrilled to have Tracy Arno join us to share her expertise in recruiting and talent acquisition. Tracy is a business leader, entrepreneur, and owner of Essence Recruitment, a successful practice built on the core values of honesty, transparency, and respect. In this episode, Tracy will share her insights on optimizing the recruiting process for growing companies, leveraging AI in recruitment, and the importance of effective onboarding. Stay tuned for an engaging and informative conversation that will help you attract and retain top talent for your organization. Hey, Tracy, how are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Hey, Tracy, really excited to kind of get this podcast started. And we really want to start with the role of recruiting and scaling a business and from the very beginning and start with strategy. And so essentially, what can companies do to improve their scale-up recruitment strategy? And would you recommend companies stagger their growth and hire in stages based on the order of importance, or rather should they hire for all positions as soon as they become available?
Yeah, and that's a really good question because it's always it's the $1 million question: when to hire and how to hire and who's the right person at the right time, right? Because we're always just looking forward, guessing on where we're going to be in 6 months. And so what I would say is that first of all, there has to be a plan. Especially I find with smaller organizations that are scaling up, they tend to recruit on the side of their desk, and there's not really a strategy around it. And then they tend to right in front and say, okay, I need this person, and then I just do an immediate hire, but they don't really go back into the strategy of the business plan and how will that person be implemented and how will that organization grow. So when you ask, do you hire everyone at the same time or when it's presented, or is there actually or should I hire in most importance? I think it actually depends on the organization and actually how quickly you're growing. But what I do say is that it has to make sense to your business plan and your strategy, to your short-term and long-term goals. Hiring people is not quick, and nor should it be quick. It is a strategy that does take time and takes process, especially if you're looking for the right fit that has the right experience and skill set and competencies for your company culture. So that's how I would say that. There's not a definite answer, but what I just really want to be clear is that you need to look at your business plan. You need to understand where this person will be within your business plan and how does it fit your strategy moving forward. So that might be multiple roles, or it might be just one at a time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Tracy. And that actually, I don't know, it reminded me a little bit of a statistic that I came across while I was researching for this episode. And maybe this leads me more into my next question, but basically what I've found is that a study from Glassdoor says that 75% of job seekers consider or do some type of employer's brand research before applying for a job. And so kind of this got me thinking a little bit about the unique challenges that lesser known companies face when they try to attract talent, especially when they try to attract top talent. And these businesses may have limited resources and brand recognition compared to more established companies in their area, or potentially nationwide or globally if they are national companies or global companies. So during your years at Essence Recruitment, you've most likely worked with many companies at different stages of growth and brand recognition. And I'm kind of curious to know, based on your experience, how should lesser known companies present their roles and compete for top talent when they have limited resources?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a great question because it is very competitive market. worldwide. And I say that we're in a forever labor challenge for the foreseeable future. For the time that I'll be in my career, absolutely, like this will always be a competitive market. And the thing that I say is that HR and marketing are actually one. So when you think about when you're hiring and you're doing your research on the candidates, you're probably Googling them. Well, at the same time that they're applying for their jobs, they're Googling you. So they're trying to find out who you are as an organization. What is your company culture? Why should they work for you? And why would it be a good fit? They're looking for organizations that are like employee centric, that they're innovative, that they have direct impact into the organization. So they have expectations and they want to see that in the forefront before they're even applying. They're definitely doing their research. So there's just such, it's so easy. And the generations coming up have everything at their fingertips. Like, unlike when I started looking for a job, like I walked down the street and put in a paper application. Very different now, right? Like, so they have the information at their fingertips. So what we need to make sure is that you are an employer of brand. So very simple through like social media. And this is actually a key thing where if you were to take a look at your website and to look at the company website and to take a look at the social media, generally we direct that information on the services that we provide. But we really don't talk about like our organization, about who we are and what we can provide our employees. We are starting to see, like in social media feeds, like people starting to promote their employees, their employee culture, what they do for team events, celebrating birthdays. And it just really is speaking to the brand. So when someone is going through, and secondary, when someone is going through an interview process, they're going to talk about it. Like the goal is that even the people that you're not going to hire, you get them to talk about actually how positive your organization is. Because as we all know, negative experiences are very much more communicated than positive experiences. So ensuring that they have a good interview process and think about the experience will help your employee brand. So it's not, it's all thinking about your employee brand, the employee experience and the candidate experience from the very beginning to the very end. I have one more thing to say actually to this also, like, and even though when you address like, when do I hire and how do I hire at what time, that's hiring, but recruiting, you should be recruiting all the time, like never stop recruiting. So what I mean by that is you're always promoting your organization. You're promoting the roles that you have within the organization, the business that you do, and the people who you serve. So you're kind of always doing the networking and the promotional side, not just to provide the services of your organization, but getting people to be like, to be an employer, a brand, and people wanting to work for you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that marketing and HR are very similar these days. And I think especially for B2B companies like ours, and our clients really, is that, we have sort of that common denominator with LinkedIn. And I think that's, obviously where people go to find jobs and network as well. So that's probably a bit of an obvious channel. And Matteo mentioned a little bit earlier Glassdoor as one of sort of review directories that people have access to. Now, for really smaller companies that are quite small, maybe there aren't as many reviews, or do you actually see companies that are already like 10 to 20 employees start having reviews on Glassdoor already? Or do you think that there are other kind of more key channels to kind of prioritize and pay attention to?
Yeah, no, good example, good question. So basically, anywhere you can leave a review, they're looking. So if it's like a Google review, in like Indeed, like you can get reviews on Indeed. The organizations will or will not invest in actually promotional on Glassdoor on under 5 employees to up to thousands, right? So, and then just keep in mind that any employee at any size of organization can leave a review on your organization. It doesn't really matter the size. So what your goal is through Facebook, Indeed, LinkedIn, Google, anywhere where you can leave a review, you want your employees to leave a review. So it is so, and they more than likely will do it if it's a negative result. So if you can put it actually as part of your practice of even two of you in an organization, it doesn't matter the size of your organization. We all have the ability to give reviews.
Yeah, and this goes back to having a strategy, right? Like we were talking about. And how would you recommend, a small business sort of handle that sort of review strategy? Like when should they ask for an employee to leave a review?
Yeah, so that can come in various different ways. Like if you have like performance reviews, or you're having like a strategy meeting, maybe you're having a year-end review of like what went well this year. Like if there's I don't think that walking up to someone's desk and saying, okay, I need you to give me a review, probably they'll be like, what? Like, I'll put that at the bottom of my list to do. But in reality, though, if there's some type of context on how that it was their part of the strategy on building the business, or like maybe there's some type of recognition, and then you make it a common practice of like, we like to promote our organization and being an employer of choice. If you love working here, this would be kind of part of a commonality of just part of the culture.
Yeah.
Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, it's just like asking reviews to a client, asking a review to an employee can also feel a bit awkward. But I think maybe you can sort of potentially tie that with sort of winning an award. And I don't know if maybe that's something that's a bit more exciting that can get people to rally behind. I don't know if you've seen companies successfully do that, but that could be a potential side benefit of doing that.
It has to be with every organization. It really depends on how you actually have like that team bonding and that team communication, which is very important. Like the goal is that you have employees that just want to do it because they love working there, right? Like at the end of the day, however that might work within your organization, they want to promote the organization that they're in. So like we do a lot of targeted recruitment, right? So when we're approaching people, we love it when we hear that they love their jobs. So we hope that, they're promoting their organization, and the organization themselves are hoping that they're promoting where they work, through either like responding to maybe some of the social media through their company or whatever that might even be. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a review. It could just be like they are an advocate of the organization and they're communicating it to the world. It's the easiest it's ever been to be able to promote where you work and why you love to be there. It's just up to the leaders to make it that as part of their culture.
Right. And would you say, sort of, again, staying on sort of that example of collecting like an employee review, is that something that ends up lying with being owned by the owner of the company, or is it maybe more owned by an office administrator or operations manager if there is one? I would say ideally perhaps by an HR person if the company's big enough to have an HR person, but I'm assuming that's not always the case.
I don't actually think it's under HR. I actually think it's the team leader. So whoever that person is reporting to, if that's directly to the owner, it's over to the office admin, or if it's actually just like a supervisor, they're the ones that have that most personal relationship. That's who I think owns it. Just like they're the ones that own any type of conflict or performance, improvement or those types of pieces. They also own the responsibility of making sure it's a great place to work for their employees, right? So that's where I would landed.
I mean, that makes sense. You really want the owner to sort of be the owner of the company culture and sort of drive it forward and all that. And so kind of continuing on sort of how you promote your company, especially, when you're a lesser known company, are there any mistakes people can make, actually, any faux pas that you see, or sort of, real life example that you can share around, what not to do, essentially?
Yeah, for sure. So a couple of things, and I'm speaking to the recruitment piece and the employee brand piece being put together. The first thing I would say, doing nothing, like not being present. So as mentioned, employees are looking for are looking for these organizations, and they want to make sure that they are viable, stable, successful organizations. So the more that organizations put in promoting their own organizations, and even like the simplest of social media or simple website, and just make sure that it really does tell the story of the organization and just the why I should work here, are just easy steps. The other thing is it should be easy to apply on a website. If you look at a lot of websites, they get very convoluted. And again, they're addressing their services on how they can help clients, but they want people to work for them, but it gets very difficult on how to find out how to connect with them. So that is like apply for a job here is in like very small font in the bottom corner, and you got to go through 6 clicks. And, so it should be easy to get a hold of the organization. I think that's one thing. The other thing I very much keep in mind, and I see over and over again with small organizations, especially when they're growing fast and recruitment is on the side of their desk, is that they don't have a plan. So because they don't have a plan, they don't schedule it out, the applicant or the candidate, whatever lingo you want to use, their experience doesn't go well. Because then there's a lack of communication, there's no follow-up. The one biggest complaint that candidates have all the time is like, I don't know where my resume is in the World Wide Web of like nothing, basically, right? Like, because nobody's getting back to them, or they take the time, prepare, go to the interview, and the organization doesn't get back to them because there's no feedback. They're not even being they don't let them know that they're not moving forward, or they cancel and they delay the process. Like, it gets really choppy very quick when you're trying to grow a business and you need people, but you don't have time to hire people.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you need to be thinking about your sort of prospective employee experience, and I would say it shouldn't be really any different than what you do with clients, right? You want to have deadline, you want to be setting expectations, like you said, following up promptly.
Yeah, I can understand how difficult it could be, especially for small businesses, really, to keep up with everything. Really, it's client work, sales, it's HR, it's recruiting, it's a lot of things, and probably recruiting sort of maybe falls a little bit behind when it comes to just being a little bit more proactive, like they probably are with the core part of their business. Switching gears a little bit, I was just having a conversation with a business owner, friend of mine, a few days ago, and weirdly enough, they were debating about the question that I was about to ask you here, whether they should have hired a marketing person or a salesperson first. And I'm pretty sure this type of questions, maybe not specifically for marketing and sales, but if you do have an example to share with us, please do. You've probably come across something like this in your work. So what do you think is the best approach for a small company that is trying to really maximize their budget and trying to understand where to go and what to do first? What should they hire? Should they hire a marketing person? Should they hire a salesperson first?
Right. And this does come up a lot. And generally they hire the salesperson first. But what happens is that the owner puts in a lot of investment into the salesperson. But there's several articles that will tell you why salespeople don't succeed when they are within an organization of a small business, because there's such high expectations, but there's really no communication from the owner side about like, this is what I want to see and what's actually realistic on what that salesperson can actually do within 1 year, because they want them to hit the road running, right? And they want them to generate business. That's what they're there for. But they don't generally, they don't give them expectations. They don't give them the time to learn and to onboard, because salespeople need to understand the organization and what they're selling before they can sell, or they're misrepresenting you, right? So they also need to be able to understand the lay of the land, like who is their customer, what is the best approach. And so it takes time. And that's one of the things that owners don't give is time, training and development, and support. They're just like, I'm too busy. I hired you to sell. Go make me some business. So I wouldn't necessarily say that sales is not the right person to hire, but I would make sure that you have a good make sure that you're hiring the right type of salesperson for what you're looking for, because there is different types of salespeople. And is it business development? Is it sales? Is it service sales? Is it consulting? Like, we need to make sure that we have the right type of person for the role that you're looking for. And everybody has clear expectations about what the outcomes are and what the timelines are. So that is, so when you ask me, do you do sales or marketing first? They go towards sales. I don't know if that's necessarily right, because also, are they spinning? Like, do you need to do more work on your employer brand? Do you need to establish your organization? Do you need to build up the reputation? Do you have internal processes and communications that you need to actually sell your organization? So there's some components around the marketing piece that need to be there first. And the way that we sell today is not the way that we sold 4 years ago. Right? Like, I mean, the world is now smaller than it's ever been. Technology online has us the ability to increase our clients anywhere. And we can do that through a lot of marketing components, not necessarily sales components. So I don't have an answer for you, but those are kind of some of the key things that you need to think about what you really need.
It's actually quite interesting to hear that although sales may be the first role that a small business goes for, it's also the first role that they find dissatisfied themselves with. Yeah. I can understand and probably empathize with the business owner, because usually these small businesses are founder sales led, right? It's the founder who's doing the sales, and the founder has usually high expectations whenever they hire their first salesperson. And whenever those expectations are met, I can understand, all the consequences that you have explained to us just now. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because if you think about like your budget, right? Like you have a line for payroll which has the salesperson, but you think that there's a quick ROI. I just would not plan for such a quick ROI. And that's why they generally generate towards getting sales first, because you see a quicker ROI where marketing takes time. We all know that, right? Like, and there's a lot of back end work that's happening that you don't directly see right away. Owners tend to not be that patient, right? Like, that's why I said HR. It's interesting. HR and I wouldn't say HR even. I'd say talent, like people and culture, and marketing are the two last roles that owners generally hire for, but it's your brand and your people, which are what are going to help your organization succeed. So it's just been a natural instinct to go towards sales first, because you think that you have a quick ROI.
Yeah, and it also depends on, what you're selling. And if you're selling, complex services, your sales cycle may actually be pretty long. Or, if you have a high value deal, you may not be looking at, a high volume of sales, but, you have even just getting a few sales closed may take a while. And so, seeing that ROI will take even longer. And then the question is also, do you have any leads to give to this salesperson? Is that salesperson expected to close? And, there are a lot of different types of sales roles, like you mentioned earlier. You're hiring a closer, and therefore you need to have leads to provide to that person. Or are you expecting someone to be doing cold calling, in which case it may be a completely different type of personality and person you're actually looking to hire for. So taking that into account, makes sense. And then sort of let's assume, for the sake of this conversation, and then you're trying to hire first a marketing person. What should this marketing person be like? Should it be a senior person, and that may come at a higher risk of hiring someone that will cost more, or are you hiring sort of more of a doer and a more junior person? What would you recommend, and what do you tend to see businesses going for?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say it really will depend on where you're at with your organization, and actually what do you have internally, right? Like, so what do you have internally, and are you able to contract any of the components that you don't have specialty for out. Like there's a lot of things that you have to think about, because the higher the marketing expertise, the more that they want to work on the strategy. Right? Like they don't want to they don't want to do a social media post, right? They don't necessarily may want to do some of the technical stuff. And then there's also the component, are you looking for a communications person? Or are you looking for a marketing person? Because again, they're totally two different pieces, right? Like if you're looking for someone who's a copywriter, you're necessarily not going to find someone who can do graphic design, right? So you got to think about what your needs are, what you're looking for. And so like for it, I'll give you an example of our own organization. Like when we started, like everything had to be contracted out, because there's no way that I could, like everything, I had a fractional brand strategist, and then I had like hiring out all the components of like social media and then the website. And because first of all, we couldn't afford it in-house. But we also needed very different specialties as we were starting out. But as we were growing, we were able to bring some of that in-house, and that was the simple stuff, but still had to hire out the strategy stuff. But as I would say, if you're hiring it, and so I'll also give you another example, if you hire too junior, they're learning as you're learning. So, and we got this feedback from one of our clients. At the time of the budget, they only had enough to hire a marketing student, basically. So someone right out of university, did their co-op, really couldn't foresee anything but what was in front of them, right? So, but as they grew, we were able to hire someone that had a little bit more experience, been around a couple cycles, 3 years experience, and the world of difference of what they could bring the value to the organization actually was more than what the cost of the salary was. So some of it is, this is all I can have right now, and be expected that I'm going to learn with you, and they're not going to get you as far as you need them to do. They're going to do the bare minimums because that's all they know, and they're growing with you. Or if you can start looking at like, okay, 2 or 3 years of experience, I just need them to do the doing, being able to start doing the research, right? Like them knowing how to foresee a little bit more, of like, oh, I don't know this, but I know we need this, so I'm going to figure it out. And then you work into like getting it to be more of a strategist. But it's just where your stages are and what you can afford. It is a catch-22 for sure. You need this, but you can't afford it. But you need them to build your business, so you can afford it. Like it is a lot of hands-on as you're growing, for sure.
Yeah, it's not easy when you're trying to balance cash flow and profitability. For sure you've got to make some trade-offs, and then it's also about having that realistic expectation of, okay, maybe I will go with a student, but my expectation will be a lot lower than, and then potentially build a plan so that you can get to a stage where you can actually hire a more experienced person and sort of, like you said, propel your company, forward at that point.
Yeah. Just remembering that nobody can be everything to everyone, right? So it doesn't matter if they are senior or junior, right? Like, I mean, we tend to hire people to solve our problems of where our gaps are, but we also need to remember, like, we have to hold some accountability about like leading and supporting and guiding these people and holding viable expectations. So
yeah, and I mean, I think that's particularly true of marketing, although I'm sure that's true in other fields. Even if you're doing programming, there's obviously a lot of different languages to program in. I think people always expect IT companies to also do website development, but actually more often than not, they don't.
And they don't. They don't have the skill set. They just don't. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, I think that makes sense.
But even in marketing, like a prime example is like, we have like, give us a list of we need all of this done, but we need like, they just need to have a marketing degree. And I was like, well, they're good at like 2 examples of would be, I see all the time, is like graphic design is not copywriting. Like they're totally 2 different skill sets. Like, so one is more than likely they can do it, but they're not great at both. Right. So just remember what their skill set is and what you're going to get from them. Just because they went to the same school, and under the same degree doesn't mean that they all have the same talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder also if the fact that sometimes companies hire sort of marketing for when hiring marketing roles for the first time, I guess it all depends also what type of background maybe the founder of the company has. Maybe if the founder has some type of marketing background, then the marketing hire doesn't necessarily have to be a senior right away, since the founder can potentially guide some of that work through his own experience or her own experience. Um, but my hunch also tells me a little bit that if hiring a junior first could also lead them to feeling like that was not the right decision, and sometimes they then sort of backtrack and decide, okay, I want to instead find a senior to fill in this role because I understand there's too much that this junior person cannot do that I thought they could do. So they try to probably go on a budget at first, but then realize that it could have been a better choice to go with a senior hire at a later stage after having experienced working with a junior hire for a period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that's where it comes into when you have the plan. So you need to identify a practice has been is that people just start hiring quick, right? Like I said that at the very beginning, like they just, it's in front of them. They need someone, they hire, but they don't have a plan and they don't have a strategy and they don't really understand where they're going to align within the organization. Take the time to think about what is the gap, why are we hiring, and what is the objective of this role, and what does this person need to have to be successful to achieve that objective. And I don't think that owners, as they're recruiting on the side of their desk, are doing that well. They're just like, oh, I need a marketing person. I know that they're great at this and I'm not going to screen them properly. And, oh, they're great. Oh, just kidding. They're not. They don't have anything that, they don't have the skill set that we really need. So taking the time to ensure, like, what is the objective of the role and what would it take to be successful, and go through a good interview process to make sure you comfortably have that answer before making an offer. It's expensive, right? To hire.
I can understand. Yeah. Like expensive and time consuming.
Yeah.
So before we talked about how hiring and recruitment and hiring are sort of a bit more, it's a reactive sort of activity for most small businesses. But we also talked about how, the digital sort of technology of today is much more and helpful to businesses to find top talent. And I'm curious to know how the evolution of AI and the introduction of AI in the recruitment field has helped small businesses and even recruitment companies like yours accelerate or even improve the quality of the recruitment process for top talent.
So I did write a blog about this and my personal perspective on it. So you could check that out on our website, but AI is not the all and be end all. I say that AI and HR work better together. And I just recently went to a conference that was confirmed. So in recruitment, there are ways definitely to be more efficient. The issue is that, like, we use applicant tracking systems or HRIS systems, or, everything is by like in the lingo of SEO, like everything is by a search word. And so, but what it does, and it is known and we all use them, like applicant tracking systems, that's really where our database of where we keep all our applicants from the 13 years that Essence has been here, where it's all the information is an applicant tracking system. So when we have a new role, like you do a search. And so you don't look through thousands of resumes. It hones in on key search words. Two concerns with that, and it is known that applicant tracking systems can miss really good candidates based on not the right search words. generally people, and because of two reasons, generally people don't write a good resume. Like almost 99% of them, we're asking people to update or fix or change. If it's not a traditional title, it won't pull the right skill sets. Now, some applicant tracking systems are much more advanced than others, so they can pull more around the competencies and the skill sets. But you're also relying on a resume that somebody wrote, keeping in mind that they probably didn't write it well. And then thirdly, there's more and more, and this is like the foundation of Essence's success, is we focus on culture and culture add and culture fit. So that is not necessarily going to be relayed on a resume. So when we're doing search words, we're missing that component. And if you talk to business owners, they look on the who, not the what. So it doesn't align. So if we're searching on words that are actually experiences, but we're actually looking for fit, we're not being able to find the right people through AI, right? Like through the technology of search words. The other thing is that as a small business owner, you're trying to promote your role. It's not like the olden days where you knew, like you go to the help wanted and all the roles are there, or you know where to go find, like it was very specific on how you could find where job boards were, and they were very easy to find. Well, now it's complicated, and it's like pay to play, and how much do you pay, and where do you address, so people don't use job boards well because they don't understand them very well, because it's not really their business, right? Like they post a role once a month, they pump in $300, they didn't do it right, they get a lot of bad applicants, didn't work. So there's just like this, it's because everything is in the cloud, or like it's out there, and there's just no specific way to find a job, and there's no specific way to promote a job. You're hoping that you're doing the best work you can to promote, and you're also hoping that you're finding the best way to find you. So like kind of both sides, it's not easy for each side. So AI, again, like AI tools will help, but and even some people have chat, like auto, or why am I going blank? The chat box or
Chat GPT.
No, where the little boy, the little man on the side says, "How can I help you?"
Yeah, the chat bot. Yeah, the chat bot.
Yeah, the chat bot. I was like, okay, sorry, went blank. And some people the human experience is getting very much more non-human because they're trying to utilize AI to be more efficient, but it's not really giving that interactive of being the employer of choice when you have a chat box being your first impression to someone who wants to work for your organization, right? So as we all know, it's the worst it's ever going to be. Everyone talks about ChatGPT and AI, and it's just getting better and better. But I would not depend on it. I would use it, but and especially for like job descriptions for a second draft, not the first or the last draft. Maybe some of your communication through social media or whatever that might be, use it as a draft, but again, not the first or the last, because it doesn't really hone in on your employer brand, and it doesn't have the personalized touch that you would actually directly communicate. So yeah, utilize it, don't depend on it.
Right. So similar to marketing, it's sort of more a bit of a co-pilot or an assistant, but it's really sort of getting you to sort of that first draft, and not really kind of all the way. And from what I heard, I think AI indeed is good at sort of picking up on keywords and to a certain extent analyzing data. And so that I can see how that can be helpful, because one of the biggest pain when you're hiring is that you receive, a flood of applications, and it's like, oh my God, how am I going to go through that? But like you said, people aren't always the best at doing resumes, but also that's sort of just kind of relying on one approach, right? It's just the sort of inbound approach, if we want to do an analogy with marketing. But there's a lot more to finding the right person than just kind of hoping that people will come to you. And I think that there's a lot more things. And I think you kind of mentioned ads. I'm guessing there's no particular sort of AI component yet to like a LinkedIn advertising, for example, or sort of, they're trying to do outreach to kind of proactively recruit.
Yeah. So I guess on how you would look at it, like if you think of like LinkedIn, where you practice, like you use the sales component of LinkedIn or any type of like Zoom, like all these kind of databases, like Zoom Info or whatever it might be, or some of these new automations of like have sales processes to get new clients, you can use them for recruitment, right? So the same thing, you can use you're looking for a key person that you're trying to get to have a conversation with. It doesn't matter if you're trying to sell them something or you're trying to recruit them. It's the process is the same, right? So Zoom Info is a great example about like it used to be to an outreach. It was a sales tool, right? That you utilize to get to people to sell your services. They now have a talent, like a Zoom Info talent. So same thing, right? But there are still some of the human elements that you got to remember. Like networking is more than ever, and referrals are more than ever being more successful ways to find people than ever before. So, and that's why I say never stop recruiting, always promoting, is that when you utilize your networks or you have an internal or external referral program, structured or not, like those are the people that are helping you because they're the ones that understand your organization. They know who you are and they want to help you. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to that. If I think of sort of the best hires that we've had at Pronto over the years, I definitely think that referral and sort of proactive sort of recruiting have been the highest performing channels from a recruiting point of view. And so just making sure you continue to sort of rely on those sort of human networks is super important.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a blend for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, like I've been in the industry for well over 20 years and I've been like recruiting for well over 30. And I mean, I'm still like, I'd pick up the phone and just have a conversation with you if I could, like, right? But when you think of someone who's 20 years old and they're like, why are they calling me? I'm not even picking up the phone, right? Like, so it is, so it's just different methods. Like, I mean, I think about people that work here, we're 20 years difference. And so our methodologies about how we think we connect with people are very different. So,
speaking of setting up hires for success, we spoke a little bit about this earlier in our call. I've heard several times throughout my career new hires saying that their onboarding experience at the new company could at times make them feel a bit lost and unsupported, especially in the first few weeks. And surprisingly, this wasn't just limited to smaller companies, but fairly big ones too. And it turned out at times that those same companies didn't have a strong onboarding process, but also didn't have well-defined processes throughout the rest of the organization. And I wonder if there's any correlation with that. I don't know if you have any insights about it, but yeah, I'd love to hear from you if there are any particular steps or milestones a company should consider for an effective onboarding process to really help set new hires up for success, and perhaps contrast that with an example of a poor onboarding experience.
Yeah, and this is my passion right now is about onboarding, and because you're right, organizations aren't doing it well. It doesn't matter what size the organization you are, they're not doing it well. And especially for a small business, it's costly to hire someone, and it's very costly if it doesn't work out. And there's a huge percentage, is between 40 and 50% of people that it's about 40% of people, which is pretty huge, that are questioning within the first 3 days of why they actually took that role. And 23% of those people were probably crying in the bathroom. So it's because of how they felt supported when they came into the new organization. And so there's a few things that people also misinterpret. Orientation and onboarding are two different things. Orientation is like, this is where your computer is. This is where the bathroom is. This is where the lunchroom is. This is where your breaks are. This is where you get to park. Like, these are like, this is the payroll. This is how you enter in your information. That is just getting you into the door so you can actually get paid, really, in reality. Onboarding is a long-term plan that is anywhere between, depending on the role, is 3 months to a year. And it's goal setting. and it's setting people up to be successful, and it sets out clear communication. So first of all, I mean, the poorest onboarding scenario that I had is that the boss wasn't even there to welcome them aboard on their first day, and they were left sitting at their desk and they had to just start working. No direction. Like, it is literally that way, because they checked the box, they hired someone, they're good to go, they're great, they're going to be able to start. Well, that doesn't work. Like, you have to have a very, very welcoming first impression. So welcoming them aboard, who is going to be supporting them, who's going to be mentoring them, who's going to be their go-to person, can you get them a buddy if it's not you? And then there's a clear expectation of just like, this is what you're going to be learning, this is the timelines, this is what the goals will be in the first week, the first month, the second month, third month, and then you do your quarterly check-ins at a minimum of like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Like, and then there's goals within that first year of like, what are your milestones? So you're aligned. And if you can't meet those goals, how can we get you to meet them? Because if you're still in the old traditional ways of being reactive, of looking backwards in your last year and then just saying you're not performing, you're not an employer of choice. Like, you're thinking forward about how successful and rectifying any concerns, because usually it's miscommunication about why someone's not performing at the level that you expected them to be. Maybe they need more training or support. Maybe they just don't know, but they don't know who to ask because we haven't given them the ability to do that, right? So onboarding is about support, mentorship, communication, goal setting, ensuring expectations. So both of you are going down the same path, and then there's a successful outcome. Successful onboarding directly correlates with a positive bottom line.
Why do you think onboarding doesn't happen also in established companies with HR departments and whatnot? Like, I could understand why it doesn't happen at a small company where there's nobody who can actually take care of the new hire, but why at big companies as well?
I just think it's just because it's not their priority. I mean, maybe they don't even understand what it is. Like, I mean, it is actually surprising now how many people don't put it as a priority or understand the difference between orientation and onboarding and the way that they do performance reviews. And that's not even talking about the first year, like ongoing. Like, generally, if you're not doing onboarding, you're not doing a good performance management process, where, as we know, employees, one of the top 5 things that they want is direct impact and communication and transparency. So generally, like, it's actually smaller businesses that are doing better at this, is doing more unstructured check-ins, right? So instead of having a structured performance review, they have just check-ins. And that's kind of the way of where we're going. So
yeah, I think one of the reasons perhaps for why bigger companies are struggling is I think onboarding tends to be a little bit more personalized to your department, because, like, sort of you mentioned, it's like, yes, orientation is sort of what HR does, and I think they kind of check those boxes to a certain extent. But I think, then it comes to actually doing the work and how you're supposed to do the work. How does your department, what's their process, how, and learning sort of that way of a new company, I think takes time, and you need to be, actively engaging with the people, in the department that you're working with. What's your answer to this objection when you're with a client and you're in sales, and you ask them, they ask you a specific question around, do you have this specific feature, or do you have a solution for this? The answer may vary a lot, and I can see how you have to customize as well onboarding to a certain extent, and so maybe it's harder to customize at scale as you grow and you have more and more employees. And then I guess the more employees you have, the fewer are actually involved or have experience in onboarding.
I just think, as a leader, you put it as a priority or not, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't think that it would be tougher for a smaller business because they have 7 roles. They don't have 1, right? So to find the time to be able to do it is actually harder, right? Whereas the larger you get over processed for sure. But I mean, sure. I mean, if it's part of your culture, you will do it.
Another thing you mentioned was sort of, people just end up being at their desk. And I remember you and I talking about, how a lot of people have gone sort of to working remotely, and, which we do as well at Pronto. And so we've got experience in doing both kind of remote, onboarding and in-person onboarding. Do you see any, changes in terms of onboarding satisfaction since companies have gone remote? What have you been observing?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is that like working from home prior to COVID and working from home, like you worked, so it's different. Working from home prior to COVID and working from home after COVID is different because like I actually worked from home prior to COVID, but it was a way different scenario because our organization was trained and developed that way. Like everyone always worked from home. So we had offices in our own, like we were set up as an office, like we had to ensure that we had a safe place to work. We had an office, we had structured meetings, we had a development plan because our managers were trained to understand that their employees don't work in an office with them. Unfortunately, we brought everybody home and our organizations weren't set up to be the same way. We just threw a computer at them and said, hope to God that you can work. And so like the whole entire like proper office setup at home is not actually something that is actually thought of in most organizations. And then, or nor can they afford it. And then second of all, the second thing is that the managers or leaders are not trained to know how to train to work with people that are not in front of them. So the communication is not clear. There's either over meetings or not enough meetings, or they're useless meetings, right? Like, it's not like there is something about the water cooler talk, right? About learning and development, listening, being quick, being able to have that conversation, hearing others around the office that is just missing. And so, and you can't use the same checklist that you did prior to not having someone in the office with you. So it has to be intentional about how you're going to train, develop, and lead people from home. It's not the same as thinking about that you can do the same as someone that's literally down the hall from you. And unfortunately, middle managers or managers are not trained and developed to do this well.
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of sort of onboarding a new salesperson, and it is a lot of extra work. It is hard. It is hard to do remotely. Yep. You try to invest time in like Zoom calls and whatnot, and it's definitely tiring on the person providing the training. I think it's tiring on the new person as well, who has so much information to learn. And like you said, it's doing it over a computer and they're screen sharing and all that kind of stuff. It's not so easy nonetheless. Also, earlier we talked a lot about how it's important to hire for culture and fit. And, I tend to think of organizations trying to sort of teach that through maybe orientation one time. Is that the way you see it being done, or are there any particular recommendations that you have to make sure that sort of the company culture can be learned, obviously not just through a one-time meeting, but over time?
Yeah. No, it can't be. It's not a one-time deal. Like this is like you live, breathe your culture. So through the interview process, you should be really promoting your culture and asking questions around your values, so they have a good idea about what that culture should look like. In the interview processes are getting a little bit different about like, can they see the space? Can they meet the team? Like, can there be the casual, like on the side conversations that aren't so structured? So you get to know the real person. They get to know the real people within the organization. So there's not surprises when they get there is my message to that. And then second of all, like your culture as leaders, you need to live it, breathe it, and make decisions around it. So you can't just give a statement about what your culture is. They should be able to feel it, see it, touch it, basically. So it's not a one-time thing. It's like it's an everyday thing, all day thing.
Yeah. And you also mentioned about sort of the frequency of onboarding training. And I think you mentioned, not doing enough or overdoing it, what do you see as sort of a good amount of time that you should be thinking about investing into onboarding?
That answer, like, I don't know the answer to that because it really depends on the role. Like, I mean, like, so I said, like, it could take 3 months, or like it could take a year. Like, for sure, senior leadership, it takes a year for sure. Like, it takes a full year to really understand your role and the organization and how you're going to drive impact. So, it depends on the role. And I mean, and how much you spend on it depends on actually how organized you are, and how many people can support you on it, right? I mean, like, there's tough.
Let's say,
it's tough to say. I don't.
Yeah, if we took the example of a small business owner hiring a marketing manager, how much time should that small business owner be expecting to spend with that new marketing manager over the course of 3 months?
So you would have like your first day, your first week, right? Like your first month, your first check-in for sure, first month. Like, it depends on how much, if you're having a team meeting or not meeting, depends on how complex the projects are, depends on how complex the organizations, the challenges. But like, you should have those regular check-ins for sure. The weekly in the first month, and then monthly, and reviewing where they're at, like just checking how they're doing, and having that clear communication at the very minimum, right? So, and just making sure, like I said, that they're going down the path of where you need them to be at that given time in their development within your organization. So, but it's not, the one thing you can't be is non-existent. So.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, well, I think we're already at the end of our episode here. So thanks a lot for all the strategies that you've shared with us. And for sure, I think to sort of summarize, starting with a plan is a must there. And, especially thinking about, how are you going to recruit? What are you really looking for? But not only sort of thinking about, what happens, also thinking about what happens after that new person is hired, all the way through onboarding. And, this could take up to three months or a year. So really kind of thinking through and the entire investment. That's been really helpful to hear your thoughts on that. And as well, I think trying to keep your recruiting human. Obviously, there's a lot of shiny objects out there, and AI is very tempting, and we're all hoping it's going to save us a ton of time, which it does at times. I think we all use it in some shape or form, but just remembering that hiring and recruiting is particularly human, and you're hiring a person first, and so making sure that person is treated like a person is important. I think lastly, one of the things we like to ask our guests is what recommendations do they have?
Yeah, so I would say anything Patrick Lee, I always say it's right, I can't even pronounce his last name, Sony. I'm tripping over my tongue here. A great way to promote him for sure. But I'd say anything him, he has a great perspective and easy to read, right? Like everything from a dysfunctional team to like talking about meetings to like being a CEO and an executive. And, it's great, easy reads. I'd say anything by Patrick, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I can't say I can say it right either, so I'm not going to try, but Patrick Lencioni, something like that.
There we go. Thank you. For sure.
Tracy, where can people find you online, or what's the best way for them to get in touch with you if needed?
Yeah, for sure. I would actually just direct them to our website because I do write several blogs on just actually some of the things that we chatted about today. And so I would just go to essencerecruitment.ca.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tracy, for your insights today. It's been nice having you, and the conversation was really helpful. I'm sure our listeners can find this valuable just as much as we have here. So thank you so much for taking the time to speaking with us. And to our listeners, I hope today's conversation has inspired you to take a closer look at your own recruiting strategies and explore how you can leverage these lessons to attract top talent to your company. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more insights like this, and feel free to reach out to us with any questions or topics you would like us to cover in future episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep striving towards that 5 million milestone. Bye.